see the line going up and down. That means people can hear me and see me. All right? That's a good thing. Okay? So today I'm going to teach a little bit. I've been teaching about how in reincarnation, since we do reincarnate, it's a good thing to talk about, because then history has an effect on us if we think about these things. Yeah. And it's not that thinking about it is what has an effect on it, but if we look at it and see that we reincarnate, and then we have an actual real perspective of history. If we study history like in psychology or in anthropology or sociology, and instead of watch the news, and watch movies and listen to people say that we're in an apocalypse, what about the past, it looks like it's happening again, all these different things, even the possibility of a nuclear war. What is the real possibility of a nuclear war? What's the real possibility? Zero. Absolutely zero. I'm going to show you why. Because this planet's been blessed in an environmental way by having me on the planet. But yet there's all these doubting Thomases that are constantly saying, oh shit, the poo-poo in the yard, what about God? Why don't you take care of that? Everything's all bad, everything's all negative, look at the news, and then they imply, oh, we must not be thinking there's a God, or, there must not be any kind of real goodness in us, all the process of us thinking that we're going to die and be the walking dead, or be taken over by, an apocalypse and have to live through the waste of that, driving dune buggies forever. Yeah, the real reality of that, if you look at the real reality of our real reality, is that throughout history, we were really bad. Yeah? I mean, we ripped people's hearts out. We burnt people on the stake. We burnt kitties for entertainment as groups. We hung people for entertainment. Yeah, we stood around and laughed at the ghoulish scenarios of torture. Yeah, and the outlandish process of it's okay to beat the shit out of your kid till they're dead. Yeah, or your wife. Shit, she's your wife. Your kid, your wife, anybody. Take it out in your own hands. Not even vigilante, just the way it is. Because all around you is lawlessness and plus entertainment included in it. You go to coliseums, what are you watching? And this isn't who you are. This is who things have been, because of very evil processes inside of the whole of the human race. It expressed in violence and rape and lack of rights of every kind, and it allowed lunar lords to prosper and tyranny to manifest, but throughout the light, that is the evolving. It's not evolving. The darkness is not evolving. The darkness is what it is. It's violence. It's all these terrible things that go on in the world. But if you take a look at a chart and see whether or not those things have changed, you come across the reality of the fact that, things are really good and they're getting better. Wars, hardly any. In reality, there are actually hardly any wars. We're even to the point today to where we're thinking about getting rid of competition in the form of football or boxing and other forms of violence. And that's just a surfacing of the process of the Almighty. The angel within humanity. You got to have faith in the angel within humanity. And that's what I do. That's what Christ does. That's what God is blessing, is evolution. And the fact that we're not going to be like that. It's written in the Bible in a historical sense that this is what you should do. All these terrible violent things. because it's a historical book. It's not saying what you should do. It's saying what they did. And they justified it as a religious act. That's what the Bible's written. Most of it. Yeah? It's about events, accurate events, but frickin' horrifying. I mean, killing all the kids, killing all the boys, killing all the men, killing everybody but the virgin women, and then you can have them. Yeah? That was common. It wasn't just one thing that happened with Jesus, kill all the kids. It was like so common. Okay. Make sense? Yeah. Things were bad. Things were really bad. Even at the Patala, people were hanging like this, with their arms inside of these terrible devices that held their necks and held their hands for weeks and months at a time. Yeah? Or they had their hands cut off, or their ears cut off, or their eyes taken out, or their foot taken off. Yeah? Because they said something wrong, or they did something wrong. Yeah? Violence. Yeah? Well, today, we are at a point to where we do not put people to death, but rarely. I mean, rarely. And by 2026, we will never put another person to death in the United States from there on. Because that's what God does. Yeah? Yeah? And that's just one little piece of an enormous amount of peace, that comes into humanity. And yet, no one is in a state of consciousness to appreciate it. Their lower mind consciousness is myopic, and it sees fault, and it waits for the news, and the news gives it to people, and it's all fifth ray. Yeah? It's as though they're shooting kids at every school. Yeah? But it's not true. But we get that information as though it is true. We get that information as though we're in the middle of a terrorist attack. And it's not true. Nothing compared to what it was. Yeah. 1960, we had Cuba with nuclear bombs aiming at us. That was real. That was real. We have violence and rape and kids being beaten at home, raped, molested, beaten, and not anybody said a word about it. No human rights. 1960. Yeah, 1960. By 1970, that changed dramatically. By 1990, most of that ended. Yeah? By 2016, the numbers are so small, it's amazing. Yeah? And it's just going into healing crises. Yeah? Cultural processes, tattoos, homosexuality, sexual changes, things like that, which are all part of the steps that leads to violence. Yeah? The first step that leads to violence is the utopian ideology. The first step. Isn't that trip? Yeah? Thinking you could save other people by them following your utopian ideology, whether it be sociology, communism. It's got to be democracy. The only thing that will ever work is Buddhism, and that is democracy. Not sociology, not ideology, but human rights. Yeah? People have rights, and they have the right to evolve, yeah? And make changes. Yeah? And let things fall away very quickly due to human rights. Yeah? Happens naturally. Yeah? People just can't see it because they don't have the brow center. Yeah? They have the fifth ray. And they're not providing human rights all the time. They could be selfish, they could be, just thinking negative thoughts, memories, ideas, conversation, All of that turns a delusionary process of veiling God's reality. So we're not going to get the news. We're not going to get the revelation. We're going to get bullshit. We're going to get lies. We're going to get what's coming out of that person who is not appreciating the reality of God. Yeah? The complainer. Yeah? The doubting Thomas. Does that make sense? And that just opens this great big door. And there are these demons that come in. Yeah? And they filter through people. They slow down the evolution. Yeah? Yeah. And it's the astral plane. But it's not going to do anything. You know? It's just there. It's like the last straw. Yeah? And I'm going to show you that in the reality, even in psychology at Harvard, you know, they understand all this. And what they came to is the nature of the angel. That's what they came to in psychology, the nature of the angel. And the deeds of the devil, the demons inside of people. Yeah? And they labeled those demons. And they were right. Yeah? They labeled every single demon. They came up with what those demonic processes are. Yeah? And they saw the evolution of humanity. They didn't do anything. They didn't go out like, you know, do this psychology, do this and that. They just looked at humanity and saw that somehow, some evolutionary thing is happening in humanity. And their outcome was that, well, the fact that it must be that we're angels. And it's our angelic nature that's waking up. Yeah? And we just simply don't hurt people. Not in our angelic nature. And that's where we're going. Now, what's taking us there, they can't say. But they're using the word angel. Good. Makes sense? Yeah? Yeah? Here's this one guy. He's the head of Harvard. He's the one who wrote the book on the angels and the nature of angels in psychology and the evolution, and gave a lot of information. It helps to support, you know, what it is I'm trying to help everybody see. Yeah, because constantly we get depressed, and all we do is rack up more and more information in that fifth ray, and we open as many drawers as we possibly can, and they're demons. And they're not us. And we're not causing it. Yeah? It's just because it's getting healed, things are getting healed, the demons have to go away. So we learn, in the process of life, we learn that we're better people than the negative shit that even comes out of us. So we excuse ourselves. Yeah? We understand. Simply because it's the evolution of the angel. Yeah? It's empathy. If we have empathy for someone else, we should have empathy for ourselves. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah? So it's an ongoing evolution. Moves from empathy to compassion to reaction. And then you have an understanding that all your reactions and all your actions are truly godly. And you can realize which ones are negative and which ones aren't. Yeah? And you choose. Yeah? It's not like you turn them off or anything, it's just that you do realize that those aren't real. Yeah, that's just bad news. Yeah, and it just makes bad energy. Yeah, but it's not true. Yeah, so you got to seek and find that which is true. Yeah? So I'm going to show you this, so it'll help you seek, find that which is true.
Headlines are about things that happen, and they give you no indication whatsoever of how common a particular activity is. Because you never see a reporter standing outside a school saying, here I am in front of Maplewood High School, which hasn't been shot up today. Or here I am in the capital of Mozambique and there's no civil war. So forget headlines. You have to, the only way to answer the question of what are the trends in violence is to look at data, where you count the number of occurrences as a proportion of the number of opportunities, and you see whether that's changed over time. So since I wrote Better Angels of Our Nature, I sent it off to the press in end of 2010, so the data that were available were from 08, 09. I keep yearly updates on what's happened to those trends, and with the exception of civil war, which after a roller coaster downward from the end of World War II has shown something of an uptick because of the Syrian civil war. It's wiped out about 13 years of progress, taken us back to the level of about 2000, but it's still a fraction of the level that it was at in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when you had not just 8 or 9 civil wars going on at a time, but 25 or 30. We tend to forget them. We tend to be amnesic about all those nasty wars in Africa and Southeast Asia that were going on in the 70s and 80s. But a lot of them had a considerable death toll. So it's clearly things have gotten worse in Syria. They've gotten worse in Ukraine, in Pakistan. But the global trend has not reverse the progress that we have seen by any means. And then all the other trends, such as homicide, which kills far more people than wars, continues to go down. Sexual violence, at least in countries that have good data, have continued to go down. Rape and domestic violence, child abuse has continued to go down. More and more states and countries have abolished capital punishment. Even democratization, the absence of government violence, where we're aware of backsliding in countries like Venezuela and Turkey and Russia. But still the global trend continues to be that the world is getting more democratic. We don't read about the countries that have liberalized, but we hear about the countries that increased their repression, and they do exist, but on the whole the world has become more democratic, as well as less homicidal, less gender-based violence, less child abuse, and so on. And even in the category of war, you can divide wars into wars between countries, old-fashioned wars of country A declares war on country B, and civil wars. And the first category, interstate wars, government on each side, has been in kind of sputtering decline for many decades. There are fewer and fewer wars between countries. The wars that exist are civil wars. And that record has continued to improve. Namely, we've had 0 interstate wars since The Better Angels of Our Nature was published. And in fact, we've had 0 interstate wars since the American invasion of Iraq in 2003. And historically, wars between countries tend to kill more people than civil wars. So even with the backsliding that we've seen in the case of civil war, in the case of the most destructive form of wars, the world has still not seen a return to the bad old days of the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, so, he's pretty informative. He was on TED in 2006 and showed the relationships. He didn't develop, Harvard and all of them hadn't developed the next few stages of information of those statistics, and found them to be overwhelming as to how fast this thing is moving in its process of becoming nonviolent and non-competitive. One of the key changes in the world is the essence of competition, the essence of where you want to have revenge over something, an emotional reaction or response, where we're angry, we're hateful, we're coming from very low areas, yeah? And that's usually because we're part of a clique, like a gang or something of that nature. It builds us up to move into that sort of thing, yeah? But by real reality is that we've been cleansed, yeah, through the process of there being a hierarchy on the planet over the last 2,000 years. And the process of people who seek spirituality, who seek meditation, truly seek, have a grand opportunity of taking incarnations in the areas of which I teach. Yeah, so Tibetan Buddhism flourished. Yeah, out of all this stuff that was going on in the world, all the wars, everything that was going on, Tibetan Buddhism flourished. And it kept flourishing. The trees start growing. More and more and more was going on. That's because more and more people out of humanity had the opportunity. This is just an opportunity. Yeah? And no one knows this opportunity is actually on Earth. And when people die, they don't know where they're going. But if they're good and they try and they really want, I'll bring them. And they'll end up right there. Yeah? And they'll be surprised and they'll go through the process. They'll get educated. Yeah? But it will give them a completely different cultural identity than what they're expecting. Yeah? Just because there is a hidden monastic reality of the incarnation of the avatar. and the masters of wisdom that are on earth all the time. Yeah? And like they say in books, we're hidden in the Himalayas. It's true. We've been hidden in the Himalayas for a long, long time. Yeah? But all throughout India and all throughout America and all throughout the world. Yeah? But throughout this period of time, so many people have incarnated and been furthered in this process. When they reincarnate, they go back out into the world and they further technology, businesses, politics. They have a power that you cannot imagine that move this world away from violence and into the ability for us to all learn technique and education and ability to have money rather than not have money, to have food rather than not have food. Yeah? It took people through the Dust Bowl, put people into horrible scenarios, but every single cycle that humanity has gone through has been a cleansing from the past, and it opens us up to be more empathetic and more compassionate as we keep reincarnating. Yeah? So these psychologists are able to now start showing that in their data. Don't get pessimistic about what's going on. Today in the news they were showing that even in the relationship of the greenhouse effect or pollution or things like that, despite, there's a lot of, people go, well, we're really far behind, and America has dropped out, and, there's these countries like China and others that aren't doing enough. But the reality is that pollution has gone down dramatically. And that the truth is that we're at a standard of the 1990s, and we're at least 5 to 10 years in advance of what we're expected to be at the level of pollution. Yeah? So this is going to increase 10, 20, 30-fold faster than anybody ever projected, because we are now driving electric cars. No one ever projected that, let alone a Prius. And we've been doing that for the last 10 years. Yeah? So no one's taking in consideration what's going on with Christ and how Christ is helping just to move people. I'm not a God. I'm not like controlling anything, but I'm the positive side of things. Yeah? I believe in this evolution thing. I don't believe tomorrow is a bad day. I don't believe anybody's incarnated and is going to have a situation that causes harm. I don't believe it. It's not really that possible. But there's all these flower essences that on the negative side, they are going to see that. Yeah? So that's where the news comes from. That's where people's emotions come from. But it's not the truth. And it veils us. Because there is an ongoing, everlasting, forever love that's manifesting on this earth. And it has a counter-evolutionary force to hate. Whoops, sorry. To hate. Yeah? And hate is what creates all that outcome. Yeah? And I ain't got anything to do with it. I'm totally different. Yeah? So it's better to see these things and put those things in your mind, appreciate those things, so that those demonic things that I'm talking about that are from the past don't try and usher through emotions and feelings, because they can't work it through the physical plane. Not anymore. Does it make sense? The higher they can go is the emotional plane, or drive you to insanity to kill yourself. Make sense? That's violence. That's how, instead of pushing you to kill millions of people, you kill yourself. It's still the same thing. Does that make sense? Yeah? So in my process, the process where Buddhism comes in or Christianity comes in, it's all an understanding that comes with the process of evolution. Yeah? It's not like we're not doing anything. We are. Or we would be more violent than we are as a whole. Because it matters about as a whole, not as a myopic. Because you can always find fault in the myopic. But what if the whole is different than the myopic? Does that make sense? Yeah? Because it's true. The myopic is really affected by the whole. Even though you can find fault in anything if you're myopic. Does that make sense? Yeah? So look at the big picture. Yeah? Yeah? It's worth it, because the other is anti-Christ. Yeah? And it doesn't further Christ at all. It doesn't further the people you want to help. It hurts them. Any depression, any negativity you have is like tripping them up in the process of trying to make a decision. And it's not a person thing. We're all being blessed. We have no idea where we're going to end up. You die today, tell me where you're going. Yeah? I don't know. You don't know. But I'm telling you one thing, it's going to be great. Yeah? Does it make sense? On the other side, the devil is going, I don't know about that. You know, it could go anywhere. Yeah? Make sense? That's not true. It's not true. The Lord's in charge of your incarnation, not the devil. Just relax. Look at the statistics. Yeah? Okay? Make sense? I read that in a magazine. Okay, so we're going to do the invocation, evocation. Oh. It was interesting, this guy on TED, it was in 2006, and it wasn't a very spiritual thing he was talking about. It was pretty intellectual, but it was leading to a very spiritual understanding by the time he was getting ready to get off stage. You know, he was going, you know, furthermore, but then he couldn't because he didn't have time, you know, but he was starting to get some clicks going on that, wow, this is bigger, you know, because he would make reference to the Bible and stuff, and you could just see in his heart, I really would like to mention God in this, you know what I mean? But he's a psychologist. He's out of Harvard. You ever see God is dead? Yeah, it don't happen. You're not a professor standing up, Jesus Christ is the cause of all this. Yeah, no, I don't think so. It's not going to happen. But it is. He at least got angels in and everything. So, make sense? Yeah. That's a good side of the fifth ray. Yeah, it does reveal. In the end, it does reveal. And this guy's doing that. It's really cool because most psychologists are kind of like, you think they're going great, 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 great. And then okay. All right. So I'm going to do the invocation. Just relax. Okay, repeat after me. I invoke the power, the love, and the wisdom of my ashram, soul, and monad. To guide me into the right activity in the plan. To clarify and stimulate my mind. To transform and transmute my feelings and emotions. To energize and vitalize and heal my physical and etheric body. So there is a normal flow of energy in my physical and etheric body. Through this day and every day, I ask this in the name of the Christ to serve the One. All in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
am a messenger of light. I am a pilgrim on the way of love. I do not walk alone, but I know myself as one with all great souls, and one with them in service. Their strength is mine. This strength I claim. My strength is theirs, and this I freely give. A soul, I walk on earth. I represent the One. The will of God moves the world. The past has gone. I am that past. It makes me what I am. The future comes. I also am the coming destiny, and therefore I am that. The present flows from out the past. The future colors that which is. I make the future also by my present knowledge of the past and the beauty of the present. And therefore I am that I am. Within the circle of the will of God I stand. Without the radius of the world of glamour, I take my place. And there I stand. Just reveals a different lighted way. I take my stand. Before the presence, I will take my place, and there will firmly stand. And stand I see. Love is the incentive of our aspiration on the path. Love is the substance of our living in the world. Love is the light and the light of freedom from all creatures. Love pulses through the universe in a divine rhythm. Love is the consciousness of God. May the holy ones whose disciple I am show me the light I seek. May all mankind, may all humanity of all knowledge, may all light on earth make manifest the soul in all things, all life. I invoke the radiant golden sun to manifest the thread of the soul into the kingdoms of the elementals, into the kingdoms of the vegetables, the animals, into the astral plane. I invoke all humanity to become the caretakers of the kingdom of God. I invoke the will of God as the soul. I stand before the judgment seat of my soul. I am that soul. All love and light am I serve the world and lose myself in service. This is my life, and this is the way that I will tread until the day be with us all. Of humanity, the family of humanity, to bring forth points of energy within themselves, inaugurating certain new techniques in work and in modes of communication. I invoke the group of telepathic communicators. I invoke the group of trained observers. I invoke the group of magnetic healers. I invoke the group of the educators of this new age. I invoke the group of political organizers. I invoke the group of the workers in the field of religion. I invoke the group of scientific servers. I invoke the group of psychologists. I invoke the group of financiers and economists. I invoke all creative workers as the new group. I invoke the externalization of the inner existence through the manifestation and the externalization of the avatar. As there are in 1,000 million worlds, so many times I make reverent salutations to all the Buddhas of the three eras, Suddha Dharma, and to the excellent community. I pay homage to all the shrines and all the places in which the Bodhisattvas have been. I make profound obeisance to the teachers and to those whom respectful salutation every day I go for refuge. To the powerful protectors whose purpose it is to guard the universe, the mighty conquerors who overcome suffering everywhere. Wholeheartedly also I take my refuge in the dharma which they have ascertained, which is the abode of security against the rounds of rebirth. Likewise, in the host of the bodhisattvas, I take my refuge. To the Buddha, for refuge I go. To the Dharma, for refuge I go. To the Sangha, for refuge I go. To the Buddha, for refuge I go. To the Dharma, for refuge I go. To the Sangha, for refuge I go. To the Buddha, for refuge I go. To the Dharma, for refuge I go. To the Sangha, for refuge I go. To all the truth teachings of the past, to all the truth teachings yet to be, to all the truth teachings that are now, my worship flows unceasingly. No other refuge than the truth. Refuge supreme is there for me. By the virtue of this truth, may grace abound and victory. All my life I go for refuge to brotherhood. To all the brotherhoods that were, to all the brotherhoods to be, to all the brotherhoods that are, my worship flows unceasingly. No refuge but the brotherhood. Refuge supreme is there for me. By the virtue of this truth, may grace abound and victory.
Just relax. Okay, open your eyes. Can just show you a couple other little things that they did in Harvard. This is violent victims. This just shows that you could see in 1990, this is something enormously powerful took place from 1990 on. And that's when I took down Sai Baba. I went to India, and then I went back into Kathmandu, and I began my process as the Tuku externalizing. And it's from that point on, I began my externalization from 1990 on until I was enthroned in the year 2000. So that process that I was allowing myself to go through is the intensity of what went into the earth. Yeah. So we can see here, this shows all the way back. This is capital punishment, and it shows in the beginning all the way back in 18-something and 1900. These are the amount, it's how much it really was going on. It was extreme. Yeah. And as time went on, when we got finally to about the year 1990, this level where you see it going up, you know, is the process where we're eliminating it. Yeah. And then this is abuse. You know, 1990, this abuse is violent victimization at school. Yeah. But yeah, you'd think, wow, look at all the bullying and everything that goes on and all that. But the reality is that it was a lot worse when I was there. Yeah. Gangs were like incredibly violent. Yeah. Beating, shooting, you know, stabbing, you know, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, you know, was gang violence, blacks against whites, Mexicans against whites. It was very violent, yeah, and it went down, yeah. I took that relationship, and it all began really moving down dramatically, especially children. Victimization. And that means victimization at home, not just at school. And then physical abuse and sexual abuse was continually, gradually going down. Despite what everybody says, yeah, it's better to know the truth, because then you can give a little appreciation to the work of Christ. Yeah, because on a day-to-day basis, I'm not just sitting here. I'm actually battling off some pretty hairy-ass demons. Yeah. It's quite a scene. And then violence against wives and girlfriends. Yeah, 1990. Yeah. And by the year 2015, you know, it is down dramatically. And this is all about human rights, Buddhism, Christianity, yeah, morals, the influence of ethics that's manifesting in the soul of a person. Yeah. This is where I was born. to the time that I was born, 1950. Yeah. People who died from battles and death, you can see, until 1950, it was at its highest point. And then I incarnated. And it dropped. Really a lot. Yeah? And it kept that way. We had Vietnam, we had this and that, but nothing, then nothing, then nothing. And now we're at. Yeah. And that's, you put Jesus Christ to work, he will go to Vietnam in a relationship with being beaten, tortured, murdered twice, yeah, go through all of that, and this little spike goes down. That's because of an individual did that, yeah. And all of this is coming, but you look at the guy and you don't go, wow, what have you actually done for us? Yeah, makes sense? Rather, because most of the time it's like, oh, I'm so afraid things are going to work out this way or that way. But the truth is, how is that possible? Really? It's just a page in a really dark book. It doesn't exist. And I think the last one, that might have been the last one. Yep, that was it. Capital punishment. Got that one. Violence against women. And battle death. That was it. There we are. Okay. So, as you can see, things are getting awesomely better. Yeah, much better. And I should show you statistics of cults, statistics of people, and their relationship to so many things, and how it's directly correlated to my activities. Yeah, 1990, the year 2000, 1950, 1951. I mean, major, whole planetary changes happen in these cycles, as I'm just going through something that afternoon. Yeah, and everybody else is going, oh, I hope it's not a toothache. Oh, I think it's, maybe you got a tummy ache, Makes sense? Yeah, but that's not the case. Yeah, it's a whole other process. Yeah, so all of this becomes the outcome. By the year 2026, we will not have any more people put to death by any reason because we simply can't do it. We don't feel that's right, no matter what they did wrong. Yeah, we just can't do it. Yeah, and it's not about, oh, we'll make them suffer longer, let them live out their life and suffer. No, it's not about that. It's about the fact I cannot kill anybody. No one can. Yeah, and it's going to come to that. And it's a moral judgment. It's a choice we make, and there's so many steps along the way that gets us to that choice. Yeah, it's like voting for Christ, voting for Christ, voting for Christ. Make sense? And then you got yourself a Christ governing world. Pretty nice, huh? Cool. Read down a magazine. Yeah. Actually, I'm getting a whole bunch of neat old magazines. I love reading magazines. Time, Life, things like that. Okay, anyway, thank you very much.